So, you think you know why the world is fracturing right now, don't you?
Yeah, everybody thinks they know.
Right. I mean, you look at the news, you look at all the anger in politics, and we always we reach for the easy answers.
You really do.
Like we blame the 2008 financial crash, or, we blame greedy banks, or we blame politicians who just like don't get it.
Or we blame whatever's trending on social media that day.
Exactly. But what if the data showed that the real reason the European Union is cracking apart, and honestly, the reason your own community might feel so incredibly divided is actually because we started trading too much with each other?
I mean, it is the ultimate counterintuitive reality. It's a total slap in the face.
It really is. So welcome to the deep dive. We're digging into a fascinating, just massive piece of research today.
A really dense one.
Yeah, it's a 2017 working paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research. And our mission today, to unpack its core finding,
Yeah.
which honestly basically rips apart everything you've been taught about global unity.
It completely destroys the illusion. I mean, for decades, the foundational belief of the modern world has been that if we, link our economies, if we share markets, we will inevitably share minds.
Right, the whole trade brings peace thing.
Exactly. But the paper we are looking at today proves that assumption is just completely, utterly wrong.
And it really is an illusion. I mean, think back to something like the 2016 Brexit vote, right?
Oh, yeah. Total shockwave.
Right. Picture the map of Europe. It's this pale, ghostly map, and suddenly there's this massive gray crack separating the United Kingdom from the mainland. The establishment's immediate reaction was just panic.
Pure panic. And then a rush to find a short-term scapegoat.
Always. They said, like, oh, it's just a temporary financial hangover from the recession.
Right, or it's just a temporary surge in populism.
Yeah, somebody just did the math wrong on a trade deal, right? But this paper argues that the monster hiding in the dark, it's ancient, and it has absolutely nothing to do with, like, mortgage-backed securities.
Nothing at all. The European Union was hailed as this utopian miracle. I mean, bringing together countries with vastly different histories, different cultures, different wallets.
It was a beautiful dream on paper.
It was, but now people are seriously asking if this was just an arrogant, fatal mistake. The foundation is showing these deep structural cracks.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because the promise was that free trade was supposed to make us best friends.
That was the pitch.
Right. If a French person is buying German cars and, like, a German person is buying French wine, we build a bridge.
We smile, we shake hands.
War becomes impossible. But instead, it seems like they just built walls. Why did they become enemies?
Well, the paradox is striking. If you trace the timeline from, say, 1980 to 2016, you see two completely contradictory trends exploding at the exact same time.
Okay, what are they?
On one hand, you have the total triumph of the European single market. Goods are crossing borders with zero friction. Capital is flowing like water.
An economic paradise.
It looks like it, right? But on the other hand, right alongside it, you see a violent, explosive rise in nationalist, anti-union political parties.
A jagged red arrow just shooting upwards.
Exactly. The neighbors are literally tearing each other apart. The more these neighboring countries interact economically, the less they trust the overarching system.
So wait, trust in European institutions just went into free fall.
Free fall. Precisely as citizens became more financially entangled. It's like history is on repeat, and this is no accident.
That is just, I'm struggling with this. Are you seriously saying that decades of buying each other's goods, shared laws, a shared currency, it actually made them turn on each other?
That's what the data says.
But how? How is that even possible when they consume the exact same media and use the exact same money?
To answer that, we really have to look at the authors of this paper. We were
Yeah.
talking about three absolute academic titans.
Right, the guys who spent 30 years digging for this truth.
Yes. Alberto Alesina from Harvard, Guido Tabellini from Bocconi, and Francesco Trebbi from UBC.
Heavy hitters.
The heaviest. And they didn't do this by looking at stock markets or trade tariffs.
Which is what economists usually do, right? They look at GDP and say, well, the line went up, so everyone must be happy.
Right. But these three realize that GDP doesn't tell you anything about the human soul. There's no politics here, no empty slogans.
Just brutal mathematical truth.
Exactly. They turn to massive surveys, the European Value Surveys. They track data from 1980 all the way to 2008 across 15 core countries.
So they ignored the political noise on TV. They just tracked the human soul. Beliefs, trust, religion, fear.
Precisely. And the math they use to diagnose Europe It applies to all of us.
Yeah, if you've ever wondered why your own country feels so divided right now, pay attention to this part. Because what they found dismantles the biggest lie of modern intuition.
The textbooks straight up lie to you.
They really did. They said economic blending creates cultural blending.
But it doesn't. It creates
It
cultural
don't.
explosion.
Picture this graph in your head. Two lines starting together in 1980. And as time goes on, they violently split apart into this giant megaphone shape.
Trade integration rockets upward on one line.
And cultural difference rockets upward right alongside it on the other, with a massive question mark sitting right between them.
The core belief of modern politics is just dead. We thought shared markets meant shared minds, but the exact opposite happened.
30 years of buying the same products didn't melt away differences.
No, it made those differences sting even more.
You know, it really reminds me of the roommate effect.
Oh, the roommate effect.
Right.
Wait,
Like you have a friend and you get along great when you just meet up for coffee once a week.
Sure, you're best friends.
So you think, hey, let's move in together. We'll split the rent, share a fridge. It makes perfect financial sense.
It's logical.
But just because you share a fridge doesn't mean you agree on how to live. Actually, sharing the fridge is exactly what makes you realize how crazy the other person is.
That is a brilliant analogy. Sharing the fridge brings out the worst.
You notice every single annoying habit because you are forced into proximity.
Proximity breeds contempt when fundamental values aren't aligned. But, the tragedy of the European experiment is that it didn't actually start out with this contempt.
Right, there was a honeymoon phase.
A golden age. For about 19 years, Europe pulled off what looked like an absolute miracle. We call it the catch-up era.
Let's talk about that, because in the 80s and 90s, things looked perfect. The poor got rich, the gap closed.
They did. If you look at a scatter plot from 1980 to 1999, you see this steep downward sloping line.
The poor kids in the class were getting the best grades.
Exactly. The poorer countries, Greece, Spain, Portugal, they're growing insanely fast. Their incomes were catching up to the rich countries like Germany.
It was the textbook dream. Everyone was winning.
But it was a trap.
A total trap. Because an invisible assassin killed the momentum.
And that assassin arrived in 1999.
The euro. Single currency. They created it to lock in the prosperity, right? They thought, let's put a ring on it.
Let's all use the same money. But instead, the engine immediately stalled out.
Just died.
If you look at the growth graph from 1999 to 2009, the line is completely flat, dead flat. The poorest countries instantly stopped catching up the exact moment the euro was born.
Wait, why? Why did sharing money ruin the ketchup miracle?
Because when a nation adopts the euro, they surrender the power to print their own money.
So Greece gives up their currency, the drachma.
Right. And when you give up your currency, you give up your economic safety valves. You can't manage your own interest rates anymore.
Meaning, if your economy is struggling, you can't just devalue your money to make your exports cheaper and save your industries.
Exactly. The European Central Bank in Frankfurt sets the rules now. And they set rates that work for the massive German economy, not a struggling Greek one.
So they thought the euro was this ultimate marriage ring, but it actually turned into a pair of handcuffs.
Handcuffs that forced a terrifying new reality. Because while their incomes stopped converging, their economies started breathing in terrifying unison.
Secret synchronization.
Yes. The bell curve of economic cycles just shifts hard to the right.
Explain that, though. If they aren't catching up in wealth, how are they synchronized?
Because of the single currency, adjacent regions in totally different countries started booming and busting at the exact same time. They were strapped to the exact same roller coaster.
So if your neighbor's economy drops off a cliff, you drop off the cliff with them. Your bodies are literally chained together.
But what about their minds? That's the problem. The financial integration was absolute. But this physical binding only makes cultural differences vastly more dangerous.
Right, back to the roommate thing. If you share a bank account and your roommate makes a bad bet, your savings are gone.
And then you suddenly realize you have completely different views on risk and responsibility.
Okay, but hold on. Whenever we talk about anger tearing Europe or even America apart, the first thing everybody blames is class warfare.
Oh, always. Inequality.
Right. The rich are getting richer, the middle class is dead. But you're telling me inequality isn't the culprit here.
It is the most convenient excuse politicians have. But look at the data. Look at the U.S., where inequality truly did skyrocket, and then look at Europe.
Let's look at the wealth gap flatline.
Yes, the after-tax Gini coefficient, it's the ultimate measure of inequality. From 1985 to 2010 in Europe, that line is a flat horizontal arrow.
just stuck at 0.31.
It barely flinched for 25 years.
That is wild. So the American middle class got hollowed out, but Europe's wealth gap stayed basically identical.
The social safety nets held. The data absolutely proves that the anger tearing Europe apart is not driven by skyrocketing income inequality.
So class warfare is just a convenient excuse. It's not the real enemy.
We have to look elsewhere for the venom.
Which brings us to the ultimate failure. 30 years of forced integration. 30 years of living together. And the result?
They are 10% further apart in their hearts.
This is so tragic. If you look at the overlapping curves of cultural distance from 1980 to 2009, the line has shifted significantly to the right.
A stark red arrow pointing straight to expansion. Cultural distance expanded.
They share laws, they share borders, they share money, and yet they look at each other as strangers more today than they did in the 80s.
Because the surveys measured fundamental human values.
Right. This isn't about whether you prefer coffee or tea.
No, it's deep. Do you trust people? Should women work when jobs are scarce? Is euthanasia okay? What is the role of the state?
On every single deep human metric, Europeans diverged.
They walked away from each other.
Think about your own life, you know? You can work in the same office as someone for 10 years. You use the same coffee machine, get the same paycheck. And then one day you talk about politics and realize you have completely opposite moral compasses.
You're total strangers. And the biggest driver of this, on a continental scale, it's the tension between faith and secularism.
The cultural scissors.
Exactly. Everyone thinks the world is moving uniformly toward modern secular values.
Yeah.
Like we're all on the same escalator.
But we aren't. The fast are leaving the slow in the dust.
Picture a trajectory chart. The northern nations, Denmark, Sweden, they shoot up this steep, aggressive line toward total secularism.
Sprinting through the modern world.
Sprinting. But southern nations, like Greece and Italy, they drag along a painfully slow, flat line.
So they didn't go backward, they're just crawling.
Right. But the gap between them is a violently opening pair of scissors. The cultural whiplash is tearing the fabric of the Union apart.
Because Brussels is forcing progressive northern rules onto a southern population that just isn't there yet.
Which perfectly explains the institutional puzzle.
Oh, this part is fascinating. Unified rules, but rotting governments.
Right. Brussels can force everyone to make the exact same size of light bulb.
Or standardize the curve of a banana.
Exactly. And the data shows product market regulations actually did converge. The markets followed the rules.
But the politicians didn't.
No. If you look at government efficiency and the rule of law, from the year 2000, those lines violently explode apart.
The southern bureaucracy is just mutated and degraded.
Because you can mandate product safety. You cannot mandate a clean, efficient legal system.
So South European governance just backslid, and the euro actually made it worse, didn't it?
It did, because it removed the pressure to reform. Suddenly, the South had access to super cheap credit, backed by German reliability.
It's like mandating everyone wear the same pristine uniform, but completely ignoring the fact that half the team hasn't showered in a month.
The rules look good on paper, but the reality stinks.
The reality absolutely stinks. Okay, but brace yourself, because here comes the mind-blowing discovery, the slap in the face.
This is the wildest part of the paper.
Borders are a hoax.
90% of the cultural differences in Europe have absolutely nothing to do with national borders.
Let me repeat that. 90%. Look at the 2009 data drop. Two massive probability curves.
One shows cultural differences between two people inside the exact same country, say two Frenchmen.
And the other shows differences between two people from different countries, a Frenchman and a German.
And the two lines perfectly overlap. They are identical.
A Frenchman and a German are roughly as culturally different as two Frenchmen living in the same city.
Mathematically, the difference is a microscopic 0.06.
A rounding error.
Exactly. So if individual countries can function perfectly well with this massive internal cultural variety, why is the EU collapsing over the exact same level of variety?
Culture is just a scapegoat. Politicians blame foreign culture because it's an easy narrative.
But the math says the friction isn't about cultural values at all.
Now, a listener might be thinking, come on, surely a German and a Greek are totally different. But the researchers proved their math works with the Turkey warning.
The control group, yes. You want to see what a real cultural clash looks like.
Europe's internal squabbles are a joke compared to this.
If you plot Turkey, a candidate for EU membership at the time, against Europe, the curves don't overlap at all.
The curve for Turkish internal culture is on the far left. The curve for Turkey versus Europe is on the far right.
And between them, a massive, empty, terrifying white void.
A true cultural abyss. Europe is whining about a paper cut while completely ignoring the cliff.
The differences between France and Germany are microscopic in reality.
Okay, so if borders don't explain culture,
Mhm.
what does? I mean, usually we think living next door makes you identical.
Or having the same salary.
Right. But the researchers found that geography is dead. The curse of distance.
They ran the regressions. Cultural distance versus wealth distance. The line is flat.
Cultural distance versus physical distance.
Also flat at 0.
So your income bracket doesn't dictate your morals. Your zip code doesn't dictate your soul.
A rich guy and a poor guy in Italy are barely culturally different. Someone living in Madrid might share the exact same values as someone 2,000 miles away in Berlin.
Geography explains almost nothing. So we have to search for Europe's soul. Where is the actual center?
There is a mathematical cultural centroid of Europe.
A geographic heat map. And it shows Germany and Austria glowing in this pale central gray. They are the dead center of European values.
The economic core is also the cultural core.
But then you look at one of the EU's biggest founders.
Yes, France.
France is sitting completely off the map. They glow in cold, dark blue. They are an extreme outlier.
France and Germany run the EU, but their souls are miles apart. Germany is the heart, and France is out in the freezing cold.
This hidden value mismatch explains decades of grueling, bitter political warfare between Paris and Berlin.
They view the world fundamentally differently.
It's like starting a band where the drummer and the lead singer actually want to play completely different genres of music. The drummer wants metal, the singer wants jazz. No wonder every rehearsal ends in a screaming match.
And being an outsider to that central core, it breeds the root of fear.
Right, who is actually scared of integration.
The further you are from Europe's cultural center, the more terrified you are of losing your jobs and your identity to the EU.
The regression table is brutal. The coefficient is significant. Distance breeds fear.
But here's the crazy part. The math shows that culture only explains a tiny fraction of that panic.
How tiny?
If you could wave a wand and reduce the cultural distance to absolute 0, the fear of the EU would only drop by 6%.
6%. That is absolutely nothing. So culture is not the executioner here. The real villain is hiding.
To find it, the researchers mirrored America, the divided states.
Everyone in Europe envies the U.S. federal system. They think we have it all figured out.
They have no idea that Americans are just as culturally ripped apart as Europeans.
They look at 9 massive U.S. states, California, Texas, New York, and the interpersonal cultural distance curve shifts right over 30 years, identical to Europe.
America's fracturing too. A Californian and a Texan are as culturally distant as a German and a Greek.
The exact same magnitude of diversity, even higher internal state diversity, actually. Yet America stays united. A Texan doesn't try to secede from the U.S. dollar. Why?
Because of the destiny of history.
It's about blood, time, and memory.
Look at the timelines. The USA has 250 years of brutal constitutional building, 170 years since the Civil War, a single shared language.
They paid for their unity in blood over centuries.
And Europe, a measly 70 years of peace. The ghosts of World War II are still bleeding onto the page. No common history, no common tongue.
You cannot shortcut the soul of a nation with a trade agreement over a few decades.
The fatal flaw wasn't differing opinions, it was national identity. Without a single shared language and history, every minor economic shock triggers tribal panic.
Which leads to the pride surge. 30 years of pro-Europe propaganda totally backfired.
It failed spectacularly. They tried to build Europeans with study abroad programs and a common currency.
But instead, it bred a massive surge of fiery national pride.
The European average of national pride jumped from 37% to a roaring 50%. The UK and Southern Europe spiked in nationalism.
Because you can't just hand someone a common currency and expect them to suddenly feel a swell of patriotic love for a central bank.
It's emotionally bankrupt.
Sending kids on study abroad programs isn't enough to stop the bleeding.
If Europe wants to survive, they have to completely gut and redesign their educational and political institutions to forge a true cross-border identity. Mere market sharing is useless.
So we arrive at the outro, the open question. Are we staring down the barrel of history?
Is history repeating? Will the grandest economic experiment of our lives collapse back into the trenches of nationalism?
Picture a map of Europe today. The smooth borders of 1990 are now covered in spiderweb cracks. Britain is gone.
This massive, wealthy giant was built entirely on market logic. and that makes it incredibly fragile.
Unless they establish a truly democratic system.
Right. One where leaders are directly accountable to all citizens across borders, not just local national tribes. Otherwise, the EU will fracture.
So, here's what you need to take away from this. Look at your own country. Look at your own community. We share an economy, we share a zip code, we share the internet.
But if that doesn't make us share the same values.
Exactly. What actually binds us together? If an economic crash hits tomorrow, will you stand by your neighbors or will you retreat into your own tribe?
It's the ultimate test.
Think about that, because the data says the market won't save us. Until next time, keep diving deep.